What's up, guys? So today is the 6th of August, 2017. This is take 2 of my Mercury retrograde video. I hate Mercury when it is in the sign of Virgo. It drives me fucking nuts. I'm already, very meticulous and very detail oriented on my own. But the problem is that Scorpio Mercury is not as much of a perfectionist, more or less, as Virgo is. And Virgo is a perfectionist to the point of being fucking dysfunctional. I don't care what any Virgo says. You're fucking dysfunctional to the point of organization that you're at. Anyway, so instead of just initially what I tried to do, Virgo Mercury status, especially since it's almost conjunct with my goddamn Mars, I decided to kind of think it through for a second, didn't do obsessive elaborate notes like I used to do, which was great for, practicing my theology, but I'm way beyond that at this point. I just started actually mapping out the charts ahead of time on SolarFire, just like within 10 minutes before I actually started the webcam, and somehow, some way, all of the freaking charts, like, they somehow were duplicating themselves, and although they were labeled to be different geographical areas, or for Mercury, or for the lunar eclipse that's happening in like 12 hours from now, and the solar eclipse, because I tied those into it as well, because obviously Mercury being retrograde is going to be happening during those eclipse times. So instead of doing all that crap, which would seem like the normal, sane thing to do, to pre-plan for things and outline things, that shit doesn't work for me. I have Mars square Uranus, and then it also trines my Jupiter, so I'm just supposed to intuitively be on the fly and be better just spontaneous than pre-planned stuff. That's why I hate Virgo Mercury. That's my rant with that. Anyway, so I pulled up here. Why does it say needle? See, that's what I'm talking about. I just made it an event too. You're killing me here. Unspecified event, equal houses. Alright, so for the first chart for Mercury retrograde, it is geographically located in the Pacific Northwest on the West Coast. So I'll kind of just tackle one thing at a time instead of trying to do it in chronological order, because apparently that really fucked me up. I'm too dyslexic for that shit. So anyway, at the moment when Mercury goes retrograde, it'll be 6 p.m. on the Pacific Standard Time, or the Pacific Northwest, and the house that Mercury will be in the 9th house, conjunct with Vesta, in the quadrant of Saturn. And so essentially the 9th house has to do with one of the mental houses, the crux, that is the Jupiter house. Then we look to the depositor, which would be Jupiter in this case, being in the 10th house. So there's going to be some sort of mental reflection, obviously, because that's typically what happens with Mercury retrogrades. The typical stereotype kind of events are, mental hiccups or confusions, delays with communication or messages, or conveying information, people making misjudgments, there being mechanical breakdowns, automobile breakdowns, computer failures, network failures, etc., etc. So, keep those things in mind. Those are always typical. The fact that, also be warned that Neptune is in opposition with Mercury, and as a matter of fact, Neptune is in the 3rd house of commuting, immediate environment, transportation, that sort of thing, and Chiron is also dwelling in that house. That would emphasize that just as often as there is, mechanical breakdowns and automobile, failures or whatever with Mercury retrograde, there will be deaths involved, and or accidents at the very least. I kind of jumped the gun when I said deaths, because we do have Pluto approaching the ascendant, and I believe it's not even an hour or two after Mercury goes retrograde exactly when Pluto actually goes over the ascendant, which is a notorious death signature that I've predicted numerous times throughout the years. Not necessarily been able to pinpoint who's going to die, but definitely confirmed that there will be deaths involved. Since essentially there's a T-square to Jupiter, as well as where's that?
If it involves Jupiter and the moon, then they'll laugh.
Actually, to trine to the moon, Uranus. Yeah, actually, and it's a trine to the 5th house of self. So that just doesn't even clear the air any better than that. The self is gonna die somehow in vehicular accidents or misjudgments in transportation. So let's go ahead and just unfold this as we go. So the polarity, obviously, with Mercury being in Virgo, would be the symptoms manifesting and or would also be part of the issues or the malfunctions going on. So Neptune in Pisces, obviously having to do with misjudgment, hallucinations, dysphoria, mental disturbances, elusiveness, things being unknown to people, or secrets or things being elusive to them. So them being completely detached from reality and not knowing the fuck is going on. It being in the third house of Mercury. Also, it's in the quadrant of the moon, so this is the notorious signature for a personality conflict, meaning that people are gonna, not saying everybody, but anybody who's been teetering on the edge of mental instability, I'm talking to all you mutable sign people, mutable rising and suns specifically, you have a high probability of having a psychotic episode or a nervous breakdown. And a lot of that will actually be manifested as people just blabbering, which typically Mercury retrograde is notorious for that, blabbering shit that people don't want to hear, that you're well aware of, that you probably should have kept to yourself. Having Eris conjunct with Uranus and the moon in the 4th house just reinforces that you're just going to run your mouth when nobody wants to hear it. And it being in the quadrant of Jupiter with high ideas and beliefs, and obviously opposition with the 10th house, which is the collective or the sociological kind of realm and your reputation. People will be sabotaging their reputations. Yet again, that always seems to happen with Mercury retrogrades. There always seems to be some sort of celebrity or somebody who actually says something absolutely stupid on Twitter or social media or whatever, or something comes out in the tabloids that completely discredits them as a person or ruins their reputation. You can definitely guarantee that Trump is going to continue to say more outlandish fucking offensive things as per usual, probably a little bit more than usual in this time frame, if that matters to you. Everybody else seems to talk about Trump all the damn time, so I figured I'd just throw that in there and jump on the bandwagon with that. Anyway, so there's a grand trine with Mercury to Juno and Vesta, or Juno and Hygeia, which is in the 12th house. So that has to do with finding ways of spiritual cleansing, and essentially what's going on is that sociologically, there's been a complete and utter failure of the modern medicine or the big pharma that has been medicating people with mental issues. It's also been more and more apparent that despite the fact that it seems that there's so many avenues and different kinds of services that you can access to help you with your mental health more than ever before, there seems to be some sort of disconnect, or the community or the governments or the agencies at large just don't actually give a fuck about your mental health. That would be something fascinating to do with the fact that they're actually mentally antagonizing people. That's been a continuing thing since, I would say, obviously Neptune squaring Saturn, and obviously Pluto and Capricorn just continues to perpetuate the delusions, the cognitive dissonance, having the polarizing fake news or unreliable sources and stuff like that, because that causes a personality conflict. Personality conflicts cause psychotic episodes, neurosis, people being completely fucking deluded, dementia, not being here with reality. Not like we need any more help with that, with Neptune being in Pisces. So the duration of Mercury retrograde will be going from the 13th of August until the 5th of September. So give or take with that. It's kind of it's concerning that there's going to be a couple major transit events that will be transpiring in the meantime. Not only do we have the at least the lunar eclipse is happening tomorrow, but that's not really the one that focalizes in a geographical area. So if you happen to be a fan of mine or an audience person that happens to be from Europe or somewhere else that's not in the continental United States, then you can count yourself lucky that the eclipse won't really affect you, the solar one anyway, on the 21st of August. Also, fascinatingly enough, the actual solar eclipse will be happening in Leo, and that'll be at the the very end of Leo season. So despite the fact that more evolved souls or more evolved kind of energy is supposed to manifest from the later degrees of the signs, I would automatically assume, I don't have any actual transit events in a database to correlate with this, but just from the formulas and theories that I know, I would assume that if you were going to take the most evolved degree of a sign and conjunct it with an eclipse, that it would be the most evolved, most effective eclipse that that there has been in recent times, which kind of just reinforces my whole, this is going to be a doozy and definitely going to perpetuate more chaos, and we're definitely going to be ending the mutable years, unraveling at all of the seams. We are approaching the end of the mutable years, but also with this eclipse here, eclipses are directly associated with, I know I'm kind of jumping to the eclipse thing, but I have a point. Eclipses are specifically associated with generational aspects or aspects going on at the time that they happen, so that correlates with the Mercury thing. If you reference my eclipse videos from earlier this year in February, March, you notice that there's an emphasis on people's mental instability and people being psychotic and acting out in very psychotic ways. And so that's still going to be a perpetuating theme. We are into a mutable, almost into a mutable season. In fact, the day after this eclipse transpires, while Mercury is still retrograde, with the cognitive dissonance as well as the personality conflict going on, the sun will then go into Virgo and be in the same sign essentially as Mercury. And then shortly soon thereafter, within a week or so, when Mercury will still be retrograde, the sun will catch up to Neptune and be opposition with Neptune. So not only will there be some sort of dysphoria with mental thought processes and people won't be thinking things through, and likely be acting out in very psychotic ways because of Chiron being in the same house with Neptune, but then having the opposition with Neptune to the sun would cause some sort of disillusionment or not being aware of how you're actually affecting people and those around you. So another emphasis I'd like to point out as well, the death signature is very important. Of course, that's something that I would always point out anyway. This is actually the first, if I can recall, the first Mercury retrograde that I've actually seen Pluto approaching the ascendant that is a legit death signature. Like, before when I realized that this was a death signature, I used to actually fast forward to when there was like, hard aspects or malefics aspecting Pluto, when it would go over the ascendant, and I would actually go and obsessively post all kinds of fatalities events, collectively or individually, that would be recorded in the news. And I'm sure anybody who's been on my Facebook friends list for quite some time is well aware of those times when I've completely immersed my entire wall in all kinds of fatalities and stuff, and yeah. But anyway, so it's in opposition with Venus and Ceres, and then it's also square to Chiron in the third house, which is communications. So this could transpire in a couple of ways. First off, it's going to be mental cognitive dissonance. It's going to be people's misjudgments that will cause fatalities, likely to do with people being actually inebriated or under the influence of things that would likely transpire. And also something to do actually with the deteriorating infrastructures or infrastructures in general of commuting or transportation in general. So when we're looking at this chart in particular, this is supposed to be geographically focused for the west coast of the United States or the Pacific Northwest. So this actual aspect alignment could translate to like a bridge failure happening. There actually being some sort of environmental cataclysmic sort of event that transpires that would then knock down like the 9090 Alaskan viaduct, or something that would cause a landslide like an Oso, or theoretically, technically, because we still have a stellium in fire with Mars, the Sun in Vulcan, and the North Node all in Leo, and then also don't forget too, we have that trine to Uranus and Eris in Aries still. And then of course we have Black Moon, Lilith, and Saturn in Sagittarius hiding in the 12th house there. That could spell out fires. We're still well into fire season. But I would actually lean more towards some sort of crumbling or deterioration of infrastructures, especially since Ceres is conjunct with Venus in the opposition house, meaning Pluto and Capricorn representing the establishment, the governments that be the agencies that are supposed to police things, that are supposed to take care of the infrastructures, make sure that everything's safe. They're well aware, because there's a T-square with Jupiter to Venus and Ceres and Pluto, that Pluto and Capricorn is well aware that there's some sort of breaches or weaknesses or liabilities with structures in general, regardless if that's I wouldn't say electrical, but just in general. Like I would instantly think, just because Jupiter's involved, the interstates in particular would also be something that would be an issue. So they're well aware that there's something that's deteriorating. They're just, trying to evade the problem, deflect, distract the public, so they don't actually have to take accountability for this, either because they cannot financially afford it, and or because they don't actually want to, because they have some sort of ulterior motive, i.e. they just don't give a fuck about anybody else, or it could be an alternative that they know that there's going to be some sort of nationwide cataclysmic event that will actually completely demolish and destroy the grid as well as the infrastructures in general. Therefore, it would be completely pointless and useless to waste the money that doesn't fucking actually have any value of the Federal Reserve notes to fix anything, because it's all going to be gone. And yeah, so anyway, I guess maybe I can just sum this up and do just a Mercury retrograde thing. I can kind of tie in the eclipses later, because I feel like actually doing a kind of rant about incorporating Trump into this, and not from the perspective that I can't even say most. I don't even think like the couple astrologers that I would say are kind of interpreting things from my perspective, or what, that's me trying to be nice, or actually can legitimately predict realistic events and be realistic about it. I don't even think that those people like Trump, and even if they do, they secretly like Trump and they won't admit it because everybody gives a fuck what everybody thinks. But it's already been evident that wasn't even so much that I was a Trump supporter from the get-go. I didn't know shit about the guy. I just looked at the transits, realized that he was going to win, and instead of me going, oh my god, he's going to win, I just started to look into why he was going to win. I'm like, why is he going to win? I'm curious to know why he's going to win. I want to look into see what exactly he's all about, and what would actually be needed at the time when the election would transpire, and see why he would win. If it would be some sort of, error on the public, or if it would be because he's actually the person that should have been put for the job. And it is the latter, for sure. I'll kind of go into that, and also my earlier kind of speculations with Trump initially throughout the campaign, that he's evidently has an astrologer. I mean, that's nothing I discovered during the campaign. It's evident because he's a businessman, he's on Wall Street, he knows JP Morgan, he has to have an astrologer, and just the way that he completely not only governed his entire campaign flawlessly, and even gave little tidbit hints as he was meandering, and people probably didn't always catch it, about him actually foreshadowing like his victories, and foreshadowing this and foreshadowing that. And I still find it fascinating that he foreshadowed the terrorist attack in Brussels 2 weeks before it happened. I love how, because Geminis, of course, and I know that very well, being a Gemini rising with a Chiron Gemini in my first house too, Geminis cannot be trusted to keep information to themselves. So Trump, even if he was trying to be on the down low, he would eventually slip some of that shit out, especially with him having a Sagittarius moon like me. So I think it's fascinating, and I kind of want to actually explore that with the eclipse, because in theory, if he actually is well aware of everything and he's been briefed on it, then that would mean that a lot of his actual actions with his legislation and the things he's been trying to work on from day one once he got into the Oval Office would reflect some of the things that he knows is going to happen in the future. Basically, he's trying to do exactly what I do. He's trying to forecast the upcoming challenges and find ways to rectify, remedy them, or at least to take the blow off, you know, the intensity. So that'll be something I'll talk about in another video. I'm just going to end it here, so this isn't like an hour-long thing about Mercury retrograde. So again, the typical things: Mercury retrograde, electronic devices are going to be really, really whack. The fact that Mercury is also in Virgo. Virgo has to do with health, mental health in particular, for people who are unable to channel into this grand trine with Hygeia and Juno and the Moon and Uranus, Pallas and Mercury and Vesta, that don't find any kind of unorthodox or holistic sort of ways to try to zen themselves or calm down the batshit that's going on in their heads, that's going to eventually make them implode if they don't figure out how to deal with it. The people that fail to do so will be evident with their psychotic circus that they will then project onto the entire collective, aka Jupiter in the 10th house in the quadrant of Mercury there. And just FYI too, Pallas being in the 5th house, opposition with the MC in Scorpio. Scorpio being in the 11th house of trauma signature. So there's going to be an emphasis on trauma signatures that would be sociologically associated with Plutonians. It being in the quadrant of Neptune would make me think that either there's going to be a lot of actual, manslaughter or, negligent manslaughter directly associated with people being inebriated or under the influence. People also dying of overdoses. Prescription pills might actually be a thing too. It might actually be the catalyst for this grand trine with Hygeia, that people start to see this huge epidemic with prescription drugs, and or collectively people just decide to, what is that Jim Jones thing where everybody like drank the punch?
Yeah.
There's gonna be like a party like that somewhere. I'm just joking, kind of. But basically, sociologically, everybody's gonna either overdose or cause or go through some sort of Plutonian mental manipulation struggle. I mean, that's been an ongoing thing, but it's like going to be a Blut Royale, and everybody's going to think that what they have to say is top priority, and they're going to use brute force and bully and coerce other people by all means necessary in order to do so. So, other than that, Mercury being in the 9th house would constitute being a little bit meticulous with your beliefs or your ideations and your plans, and then also the opposition with that, those planets being in the 3rd house, Neptune and Chiron in the 3rd house, would have something to do with you feeling insecure with your immediate area, your finances, your stability, and your worth, or your actual Virgo has a lot to do with preparation. Your preparation for any kind of cataclysmic things, especially correlating with the eclipses, or lack thereof. And the panic that will ensue will be evident by whoever was not prepared. And that's the mutable years to the T anyway. So pretty much almost everyone is going to not be prepared.
We came across the waves, fled from a land at war. Oh, hello, is there someone there who cares for God-forsaken souls and God-forsaken man? Is there someone there who cares?